to live and to love the gospel of the Lord.
Heart to Heart, a Catholic media ministry, presents an inspiring gospel reflection by Father Michael Sparrow. Father Michael is a Jesuit priest working as a writer and retreat master at the Bellarmine Jesuit Retreat House outside Chicago.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Jesus said to the crowds, "I am the bread of life. Whoever believes in me will never hunger. Whoever believes in me will never thirst. But I told you that although you have seen me, you do not believe. Everything that the Father gives me will come to me, and I will not reject anyone who comes to me, because I came down from heaven not to do my own will, but the will of the one who sent me. And this is the will of the one who sent me, that I should not lose anything of what he gave me, but I should raise it up on the last day. For this is the will of my Father, that everyone who sees the Son and believes in him may have eternal life, and I will raise them on the last day." The Gospel of the Lord. Our Gospel today is from John chapter 6, an extended reflection that Jesus gives on the bread of life. The bread of life. I was meeting recently with spiritual directors who have graduated from our internship program at Bellarmine, and we began with just personal sharing and talking about how our ministry is going. And I was struck that time and time again, what came up as a theme is so many of the spiritual directors were reporting that people are struggling right now in the midst of the continuing pandemic. Even though the vaccine has been rolled out, it's a difficult time for people, a difficult time even for people of faith. There was someone who asked me to try and find a Catholic therapist for them, and I called a Catholic therapist friend of mine in the city and asked if he had available, and he said his caseload was full. And he said he would try and find someone, but he wasn't sure because all of the therapists that he knew had their caseloads full as well. I was reading an article in the paper the other day that domestic abuse is up. Anxiety levels are up. Depression levels are up. All of that is to say that this is a difficult time in our culture, and probably not telling you anything you don't know. But in the midst of this difficulty, what do we do, and is there any strength that our faith can bring to that? In 2019, there was a study that was done by the Pew Research Institute, a well-respected research institute. And the results of that research institute were astounding. 69% of Catholics, self-identified Catholics, said they didn't believe in the true presence of the Eucharist. 69% of self-identified Catholics in 2019 said that they didn't believe in the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist, but that the Eucharist was a symbol of Christ's presence among us. Only 31% of Catholics, that's less than 1 in 3 rank and file Catholics, believe in the true presence of Jesus within the Eucharist. That's an astounding statistic in light of what Jesus has to say in John chapter 6, "Whoever believes in me will never hunger. Whoever believes in me will never thirst." A popular preacher in olden days at Bellarmine and other Jesuit retreat houses around the country was an English priest by the name of Father Bernard Bassett. For years, we played his tapes his recordings at meals. And so I've heard those tapes dozens and dozens of times. And one of the stories that just strikes me so forcibly was Father Bassett saying that it's a curiosity that this same event can happen to two different people, and it destroys one person, sends them into depression, into anxiety, into hopelessness, and another person, it can impel them to great holiness. He said, why is that? The exact same event. You lose your job. There's a death of a loved one. There's an economic downturn. Your stock portfolio goes down. You're rejected in love. The exact same event happens to two different people. And for one person, it destroys their life. And for another person, it can impel them toward great holiness. Father Bassett goes on to reflect that our attitude toward our suffering has everything to do with how we're going to either flourish or self-destruct in the midst of great pain and suffering. Hunger is inevitable in life, not just physical hunger, but the deep hunger in our soul, the deep thirst in our soul. That's what Jesus is addressing. And he's saying in the midst of that, come to me, bring your hunger to me, bring your thirst to me. And we as Roman Catholics have this tremendous gift of the Eucharist. But sadly, only 2/3 of us believe that it's truly Jesus coming to us, that it's merely a symbol of his presence coming to us. If we deepen our faith in Jesus' real presence in the Eucharist, let me suggest very powerfully today that it addresses this hunger and this thirst that all of us experience, especially in this time of the continuing pandemic. Especially in the time of so much division within our church and division within our politics and division within our families. This is not a happy time in our culture right now. Jesus says to me, come to me in your hunger. Come to me in your thirst. Does that mean instantaneously everything is going to be hunky-dory roses? No, of course not. But we human beings can endure just about anything if it has meaning. If our suffering has meaning, it transforms us. There are great saints who have had terrible health throughout their life. And yet they didn't see that terrible health as God smiting them. They saw that as a share of the sufferings of Christ, and it transformed them, and they became radiant in their suffering. Christians are not any different than anyone else in terms of facing great difficulties and pain and hardship in life. We are not spared any of the suffering of life simply because we're Christians or because we're Catholics. But what we do have is Jesus' promise of saying, I will be with you in the midst of this. I will raise you up. I will strengthen you, not just in some future life, but in the here and now. I will give purpose and meaning to your suffering. But as I said, 2/3 of our people are missing out on that promise of Jesus coming to us in an intimate way, giving us his living presence. There have been countless Eucharistic miracles over the 2,000-year history of Christianity. And the Catholic Church in particular has lifted up that real presence of Jesus within the Eucharist and has witnessed it throughout the centuries, these Eucharistic miracles. One that I find particularly poignant happened in Buenos Aires on August 18th, 1996, in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Father Alejandro Petzet had just finished distributing communion when a woman told him that there was a discarded host in the back of the church. Father Alejandro followed the normal procedures. He took the host and he put it in a cup of water to dissolve it, a respectful way of dissolving the host. However, he noticed that the host did not dissolve, and the water appeared bloody. He reported that to the auxiliary bishop, Jorge Bergoglio, the future Pope Francis. Archbishop or Bishop Bergoglio, auxiliary bishop of Buenos Aires at the time, noticed that the host began to grow, and he had photographs taken. And after some time, he brought it in 2005 to a forensic pathologist. Now, note that the host was found in 1996, and in 2005, many years later, almost 10 years later, he brought it to a forensic pathologist, Dr. Frederick Zagubi, who analyzed it and came up with this result. Quote, "The analyzed material is a fragment of the heart muscle found in the wall of the left ventricle, close to the valves." You can hardly be more specific. This muscle is responsible for the contraction of the heart. The left cardiac ventricle pumps blood to all parts of the body. The heart muscle is in an inflamed state and contains a large number of white blood vessels. This indicates that the heart was alive at the time the sample was taken. I affirm that the heart was alive since white blood cells die outside a living organism. They require a living organism to sustain them. Thus, their presence indicates that the heart was alive when the sample was taken. What is more, these white blood cells have penetrated the tissue, which further indicates that the heart must have been under severe stress, as if the owner had been beaten severely around the chest. These tests were witnessed by Dr. Zagubi, who did not know the origin of the sample. He did not know the origin of the sample. After he submitted his findings, he was told that it was a host, and this was his reaction. You have to explain one thing. If this sample came from a dead person, how could it be that while I was examining it, the cells of the sample were moving and pulsating? If the heart came from someone who had died in 1996, how can it still be alive? And then when told that it came from a host, he said, "This will remain an inexplicable mystery to science, a mystery totally beyond her competence." Now, if this was an isolated example, it would still be extraordinary, but it's one of many examples throughout the centuries. What's different is that now we have modern science to be able to examine a host that refused to disintegrate. A tremendous miracle that indicates that this is the heart of Jesus that he's giving to us, the living heart of Jesus giving to us. Now put that with today's gospel of Jesus saying, all you who hunger, all you who thirst, all you who are depressed, all you who are experiencing anxiety, all you who feel the weight and the burden of these times, come to me. And let me strengthen you. Let me renew you. That doesn't happen automatically. It happens when we deepen our faith and we believe, Jesus, I believe that you are coming to me, that you want to sustain me. Perhaps you'll heal me. Perhaps you'll lift this depression. Perhaps you'll lift this anxiety. Perhaps you'll simply say to me, no, my grace is sufficient for you. But know that the Lord will not abandon us. As Jesus says in the gospel, it is the will of my Father that I not lose anyone who come to me. I will be with you in your suffering. I will give meaning to the depth of your pain. I will transform you into the saint you were created to be. Brothers and sisters, what a tremendous gift have we. And this is something that I think is especially distinct to our Catholic Christian faith. There's no faith that places more emphasis on the real presence of Jesus within the Eucharist than the Catholic tradition, than our Catholic faith. So much so that Satanists, and Satanism is on the rise right now, that Satanists, if they want to perform a black mass, they take a consecrated host from a Catholic church and desecrate it. The Satanists believe in the real presence of Jesus within the Eucharist. More Satanists believe in the real presence of Jesus within the Eucharist than we Catholics do. Except they pervert it. They don't go to a Protestant church and take the Protestants, for the most part. Episcopalians and Anglicans would be an exception. But most of the Protestant churches would say it's a symbol of Jesus' presence. The Satanists don't go to them. They go to the Catholic Church, who say, we believe this is the real presence of Jesus. And that's what they desecrate. Let us hold this tremendous gift sacred and let it transform us into the people of God. Let me just close with this brief comment. Pope Francis has said we need a new evangelization marked by joy. If we're going to bring others into the faith, it will be because of our joy. Joy, I believe, is the most inexplicable, the most infallible sign of the presence of God. No devil worshiper, no Satanist can experience the joy that comes from believing in Jesus. Let that joy, especially in this Easter season, grow within our hearts, knowing the Lord is with us. And let that be the invitation to draw many others to Jesus. Amen. Amen.
Heart to heart, hand in hand, praying for grace to understand. Spirit of Jesus, open our hearts to live and to love the gospel